Now it's time for Whispers, your number one source for all things paranormal, with your hosts, Jordan Klein and Nick Queen, and produced by the lovely Lola Miller. Whispers is brought to you by West Virginia Penitentiary Tours at the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville. Unforgettable, historical, educational.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. It is 6:08 p.m. What you say, Nikki? About 63 degrees here in downtown Wheeling. Give us a call, 304-214-1600 if you're out of the area, 1-866-514-1600. That's toll free. Oh, 1 week away, Lo. Are you ready?
She's looking at you
Trying to
like, for
remember.
what?
Are you joking? Oh.
He's been sending out invitations and everything. You broke his heart just now.
Our huge Halloween show.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's the day you're going to be rid of the kitties. Are we
No.
No.
Two went to the same owner, Weenie and Sissy.
Yeah.
So the little black one and the little long-haired one, tan one, went to the same girl. And I'm glad, because those two, they played together, slept together. You know, they needed to stay together. So I'm glad. Somebody took them. So I still have Tigger. If anybody wants Tigger, he's going to be a bigger cat. He's got really big paws
Is this the
already.
black one or the
No, this is the
white one?
tiger's.
He's
Tiger.
Tigger.
Tiger.
It makes sense to me now. What am I?
he's bouncy.
Weenie was the black one.
Fun.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, Weenie was the
You know
black
the wonderful
one.
thing about him?
Because he's just a wonderful thing.
No, he's the only one. What do you? You messed that up so bad.
I have no idea what he's
You know
talking
the wonderful things about Tigger is I'm the only one.
about. Oh, I'm not quite up on all my poo stuff.
Nick is a big poo.
guess.
It was one of my favorite.
Sorry, Nick.
I'm Winnie the Pooh. I mean, sure.
Winnie the Pooh.
Either Winnie the Pooh or Jabba the Hutt. Depending on the week.
Aw.
Nicky the Pooh.
Jordan's Pizza the Hut.
Pizza Hut. I could eat a fair share.
Pizza's calling out for you.
October is the National Fire Safety Month. The Philadelphia Volunteer Fire Department wants to remind everybody that it is a necessity to change the batteries in your smoke detectors when you change your clock backs for the fall. So just keep that in mind.
Now, when does the clocks go back again?
November 1st.
There we go.
I have to actually put batteries in mine.
Well, I'm moving to another place, so I'm going to check them once I get in.
It's a very good thing to do.
Somebody told me the other day, I check them every time I cook. What do you mean?
Yeah, that's my problem. I'm
Me
afraid to put it
too.
in the one downstairs because my oven's like the other one.
Well,
Every
Jordan's been
time
to
I
my-
light it, it goes off.
Yeah, that's the same thing with ours, and ours you can't take the battery out to stop it because it's one of the electric ones.
I tell Nick, you ever watch the comedian Ron White?
No.
Oh, well, he says something about his wife. I use it in reference to Nick. You know, the food's actually done before that particular timer goes off.
Yeah, I cook well. You enjoy my cooking.
He cooks well done.
Well done.
Oh,
That's right.
no. Is that with charcoal? My mom always said charcoal is good for your teeth.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody who's been living under a rock or wanting to be out of a rock. Wait, not the country. Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that, Lo. Next week is our Halloween party, the Whispers Halloween party, second annual, which means that we want call-ins. And all it is, you call in, you got Uncle Jimmy walking up and down your hallways at night. You got Bigfoot digging through your garden at night. E.T.'s.
First, you want to call somebody else if Bigfoot's digging through your garden. Police.
So, yeah. Alien abductions
Tom
in the middle of the
Biscardi.
night, whatever your story is, we want to hear it, so call in. We're going to have all kinds of prizes next week. We got Carmike Cinemas, Da Vinci's Pizzeria, Ollie's Hilltop, Olive Garden. Who else we got, Nick? Am I missing people? We got all kinds of books from past guests.
Yeah, we're working on getting. I want to make sure before I get those. I'm still talking to her. Pretty sure we'll hopefully get those though. I don't want to.
So we got all kinds of stuff to give
We
away.
got stuff.
We got stuff.
We got stuff.
We're whispers. We got stuff.
Stuff.
All right,
We're
Nick.
still working to get more stuff. If you have stuff you want to give us.
But no kittens this time. No kittens.
Yeah, I guess Lola doesn't want us to
ShamWows.
give away her cats.
Not Tigger. I mean, I'll give Tigger away if somebody, but I can't give him away as just a giveaway because Tigger's a special kid.
Did you want to play that commercial we just made for that? 30 seconds. She's got it. I was wondering if
Let's
that's
do it
why.
during the commercial break.
Okay, yeah.
That way it sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't
All right.
don't confuse me, y'all.
Let's do
so sorry.
one thing at a time for Lola.
Yes.
Nick, you want to introduce our guest?
I can do that, I guess.
Oh,
All right.
right.
Bill Bean was as a child was living in a house in Maryland, occupied by demonic force. Experienced firsthand terrifying events, unrelenting torment, and violent physical attacks perpetrated by mysterious entities. And he's going to tell us about it now. Bill, are you with us?
I am, and thank you guys so much for having me on.
Mr. Bean, thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Now, where at in Maryland did this happen?
It happened in Glen Burnie, Maryland. My family and I moved into a 3-bedroom ranch-style home located in Glen Burnie, Maryland, and we endured over 10 years
Really?
of some unimaginable horrors, and there's no doubt that this evil force greatly contributed to the destruction of my family.
My God.
Now, when you say destruction of your family, what exactly, or should we wait till the end? Let's wait till the end to find that out.
Yeah,
I don't want to jump around, so.
There's a lot to talk about, that's for sure, and I'll certainly try and cover all the bases for you and paint the picture as best I can.
All right, well, let's go. Now, how old again were you when you moved into this house?
I was 4 years old.
4 years old?
Yeah, we moved in, and my first memories of this place were not fine ones, that's for sure. I was very unnerved by the sight of the place. And again, at the age of 4, I should not have had this type of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And the place, to this day, still has a very ominous look and feel about it. Now, I have not been back to the house since leaving in 1980. However, I have passed by it on many occasions over the years, and you're able to look down. There's a highway that passes by the house. The house is located on a downhill cul-de-sac, and you can look down from the highway, and it just still has the same ominous look and feel about it.
So the house is still there? Now, is there anybody
Yeah.
living in the house?
Yes, there is a family living there. Again, I don't know who the family is,
Sure.
but I was contacted by someone that did live there from 1991 to 94 with his family. As you know, my show was featured on the Discovery Channel. The Discovery Channel series A Haunting did a 1-hour presentation on my story, and it aired on September 7, 2006.
And it was called The House of the Dead, correct?
Correct, yeah. And I was contacted by a young man named Edward Hardin after he viewed this, and he told me, he said, I just knew it. He said, I knew that it was the house that we lived in. And he said his family had many bizarre, unexplainable, supernatural experiences in that house as well. Now,
Wow.
his family was not attacked like my family and I were, thank God. But he has gone on record to state that they did have many supernatural experiences in the house.
Well, now, can you tell us what kind of stuff was going on in your house that happened to you?
Yeah, and I want to say something as well before we get into this.
Oh, sure.
The story goes really much further back than 1970. And I discovered this after speaking with my mother's siblings and seeing some old family photographs. My sister had given me some of my mother's old family photos from a few years ago. My mother had passed several months after we moved out of the house, and my sister was in possession of her family photographs. And I started looking through some of these photographs, and I found many bizarre things, anomalous things in some of these photos that were indicative of something going on much further back than 1970. And her siblings corroborated that, saying that they had had paranormal experiences in their childhoods as well. So it's my belief, my feeling that someone did something way back on my mother's side of the family to open a doorway to this evil. Now, whether it be a curse or someone just simply invoking some sort of satanic evil power, whatever the case may be, I believe it started back then, and I think that evil force actually attached to my mother's side of the family, and my mother in particular, and led us to this house where evil was already manifested. So I've often said in my interviews that my family and I were in the middle of a two-pronged attack from evil, and no question, once again, it greatly contributed to the destruction of my family. It began 2 days after moving in, and my mother was the first to have an experience, and this happened while she was alone in the house. My father, who was a very good man, very hardworking family man, a master carpenter, a very gifted and blessed man, truly. Just incredible physical skills, and was blessed with the ability to be successful at anything that he wanted to. And it's such a sad and tragic story for both of my parents. But he had taken, I have an older sister and a younger brother, he had taken us to his parents' house for the day to leave my mother alone and let her unpack and organize in peace, or so she thought. And the first event occurred while she was unpacking in the house, and she was in the living room. She felt a presence, and she felt that this presence was behind her. And in her mind, she truly thought that it was my father sneaking back into the house to play a joke on her. He had that type of sense of humor. And she spun around fully anticipating to see him, and was hopeful in startling him first. And to her dismay and shock and surprise, nothing or no one was there. So as you can imagine, she was taken aback by this, but she was eventually able to collect herself and go back to what she was doing. And it wasn't long after that one of the bedroom doors slammed shut by itself, and that was enough to make her go outside until we returned. So that's where it began, and then it gradually escalated into violent physical attacks on us by these entities.
Wow. Now, when was this house built?
The houses were built in the 40s, and they were built for military, for the returning soldiers returning from the war. And now there's some interesting history on the area. There's a man by the name of John D. Romine that wrote a book called The Enigma of the Wishing Rock. And in John's research, he states that way back, many Indian tribes were in that area, and they gathered and worshipped at a structure located 2 miles south from that house called the Wishing Rock. And again, he states in his research that these Native Americans believed that this structure had supernatural powers. And if in fact there's anything to this at all, I've thought about this quite often.
Yeah. If
there's anything to this, then it's quite possible that some sort of doorway or vortex, whatever you want to call it, was opened, and these demonic entities, whether they're fallen angels or demons or whatever, traveled through this, and it has greatly affected the entire area. You would be shocked at the amount of response I got from that show, and that A Haunting segment is one of the most watched segments in the history of that series, and every time it airs, I get contacted from people, and a lot of people in that area telling me, what is either currently going on in their homes or what they have been through in the area. It's just remarkable.
So the entire area is having kind of this presence there. I mean, is it similar to what you went through, or
not quite as severe? And again, the reason for that, the reason I believe that it was so severe for us, is because again we were being attacked from two fronts of this evil. Evil that was already in the family and already attached to the family, leading us to this resonance where evil was already manifested. So again, we were greatly affected in a severe manner, the most severe manner.
You guys were vulnerable.
Very much so. And my parents, both great people. My mother was a wonderful mother, and she was very ill the entire time we lived in the house. She suffered from high blood pressure, which led to a series of strokes, which ultimately led to kidney failure. And my mother suffered more than any other person I've ever seen in my life. And it's just amazing she was able to function and go on for as long as she did. But again, I believe this demonic activity goes hand in hand with pretty much any negative thing, including physical and mental illness. I truly believe it.
Yeah.
Let me go. I know. How much time do we have? I don't want to go on and on and on.
We got a half hour.
Okay, great. My father, again, was a great man, but unfortunately his character and demeanor soon changed after moving into the house.
Oh, really?
Yes. This is a man that I saw as a heroic type of figure. This is a man that I would say was definitely a winner. He would be pegged a winner in life. He just had all the qualities and attributes to be tremendously successful. And it's so sad and tragic that this man's life ended, because he should have flourished, and we should have flourished along with him. My sister was the first to leave the house. She ran away in the middle of the night in 1973 and married a young man in the neighborhood. And she stated in the A Haunting show that she would have married anyone just to get out of there. She couldn't take it anymore. So It seemed as though the focus had shifted to my father after my sister departed. And he was definitely under spiritual attack. He began to drink very heavily. Now, my parents were social drinkers. They had parties and gatherings, and they were quite popular, and they enjoyed that. But again, it didn't go any further than that. Well, after getting into the house and these negative things starting to occur, my father began to really develop some very, very bad habits, and his character began to dramatically change. And he went from this good, hardworking family man to a raging alcoholic who began to physically abuse my mother on a regular basis between 1973 and 1975, nearly killing her on several occasions.
Now, did he drink much, before this happened, or was this like totally new?
He was a social drinker, and as this, as time went by in the house, and as these events continued to unfold and transpire, there's no doubt in my mind that, again, he was under demonic influence. And I have no doubt in my mind, based on what I witnessed, that these demonic entities were able to actually enter him and fuel his rage towards my mother while he was under the influence of alcohol. I believe that all of us who are under the influence of something, whether it be a drug, alcohol, something of that nature, lowers our defenses, and it puts us very vulnerable and at risk for demonic entities to come through and control.
You said this started when you were 4 years old. What was the first thing that you remember happening?
Well, the first experience I had was in 1971 at the age of 5.
Okay.
And I was asleep in my bed. Now, my brother and I shared the middle bedroom, and I'll give you a quick layout of this house.
Yes,
this house, you would walk in through the front door into the living room, which, again, this house had very dark. It was just as dark and ominous on the inside as it was on the outside. It had very dark paneling, dark brown paneled walls, and the house was dark even in the daytime. And you would make a right. You'd go into the living room and make a right down this long hallway. And down the hallway were the 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. And my brother and I shared the first bedroom on the right. And we were in our bedroom asleep, middle of the night, 1971, and his bed was closest to the window. Mine was closest to the door of the hallway. And something woke me from my sleep. And I couldn't see anyone or anything there, but I was certainly frightened, and even as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I still couldn't see anyone. Well, I continued to get more and more frightened, and I decided I was going to get up and get my parents and wake them up. And as I got out of bed, something grabbed me by my shoulders, a tremendous force, and slammed me back to my bed. And I was suddenly pinned on my back to the bed. And I cannot relay. I've given hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and I just can't relay in words the amount of sheer terror that I was experiencing at that time.
Wow.
Were you in the room by yourself then, or was
my brother was asleep in his bed? You know, we shared the bedroom. He was asleep in his bed,
Sure.
but you know, certainly wasn't awake. But I recall being so panicked and traumatized that I felt like I was going to die. I felt like my heart was jumping out of my body. I felt like I was leaving my body, and I desperately tried to scream out for my parents, and my mouth wouldn't even work. The only thing that seemed to be functioning on me at that time were my eyes, and many horrible things were happening to me during the course of this, and it is detailed in my book, Dark Force. It seemed like this was going on for hours, and I'm sure it was only minutes.
Yeah.
And as this was going on, the culmination of this ended with this manifestation. This manifestation suddenly appeared at the foot of my bed, and this manifestation was a beautiful lady that had long blonde hair. She had I want to say white gown, but it was like a pale blue, and it was glowing. She was shimmering and glowing, and I have no doubt that this was a divine manifestation. And this woman smiled and gazed at me, and I felt such comfort and peace and protection from this being, and all the horrible things that were happening to me suddenly stopped. And the most incredible part about this is this manifestation looked exactly like my mother.
Wow.
And I wasn't the only one to see her. I mean, my own mother actually was saved by this manifestation on several occasions in the house while she was being attacked by demonic entities. So I have no doubt.
And she saw it, and it looked just like her?
Yes.
Okay, so I was going to ask, do you think it was, appeared like her to...
Yeah.
Because that was a comfort, but...
Yeah, can you imagine, having something coming to your aid that, number one, is a manifestation, a supernatural manifestation, and number two, this entity or being looking exactly like you. So
it would scare me half to death.
Yeah, quite remarkable. I'll tell you, it was very difficult for me to write this book, and I left a lot of things out. There was a lot more content I could have added, but it was very, very difficult. It affected me greatly emotionally, and again, this book is God inspired because I totally relied on God to guide me through this. And when I started writing it, I was ready to just trash the whole thing because I couldn't do it. I felt like there's just no way. And the reason I say that, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here.
Yeah.
The reason I say it is because I have an 8th grade education, and I stopped going to school after my mother's untimely death, which two tragedies occurred several months after we moved out of the house. Within 2 months and 2 days of each other, my beloved grandmother, Dora Harvey, died first of a sudden series of heart attacks, and then 2 months and 2 days later, my mother, Patricia Bean, died at the age of 44 from a cerebral hemorrhage.
Wow.
Those were the two closest people to me in my life, and it just I can't describe in words the amount of emptiness that really my siblings and I had for many, many years. But
so it was really trying, getting this book out.
Oh, it was, again, there's no question that it was something that God wanted me to do.
Yeah.
He had a plan for me then. He certainly has one for me now. And it's truly God-inspired, and it really has affected many, many readers around the country and even different parts of the world in a positive way. It's incredible. I get messages from people everywhere, every day and night, and I'm up till 4 or 5 a.m. answering emails. I answer every single email, and I'm very grateful to everyone out there for their well wishes and their support. It's truly been a blessing, and just absolutely horrible. I don't know how much of the book or if any that you guys have read, but once you read it, you'll totally understand everything I'm saying here. And I wish that it was something that was more of a lighthearted nature, but then again, I believe this was God's plan.
Sometimes it takes, the meat and potatoes of a book. Not everything can be lighthearted.
Exactly.
And now, Bill, I do want to interrupt you real quick. We do need to take a break. And if you can just hang on, we'll be right back. You're listening to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Whispers Radio on AM
You do it to me
1600
every time.
WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. I'm Jordan Klein. He's Nick Queen. She's Lola Miller, and we are talking with Mr. Bill Bean about living in a demon-possessed house in Glen Burnie, Maryland, and his stories of what went on there. Sir, you still with us?
I sure am.
Did you hold with us through the break?
I sure did.
Good to hear. Now, we had a question in the chat room that is asking how many deaths, or were there any deaths recorded about the home before you moved in?
I'm really not sure about the history, and it's interesting because, again, I was for moving into the house, and I don't know if my parents ever spoke with anyone about it, and so I never put it in the book because I didn't want to put anything that wasn't factual in there, so I wasn't sure about that. But I did learn from someone recently, some people in the area knew the people that lived there prior to us, and it was very interesting because in these homes, they have very thin walls, and, you know, it'd be quite easy to put a fist or something through these walls. But in this house, the walls were very thick and solid, and this lady informed me that the previous owners of the house had actually built walls inside of the walls, and that explains why those walls were so solid in that house. And I just found it fascinating that they would build walls inside of walls and, you know, not tear the walls out. But, yeah, just totally bizarre. So many bizarre things happened. And again, it's mind-boggling that we were able to endure 10-plus years of abuse and torment in this home. And it got really bad from 1975 to 1980. That's where it was most active. Again, my father, with his abuse of my mother from 1973 to 1975, he finally left us. Thank God he left in 1975, because had he not left, I'm firmly convinced that he would have killed her.
Wow.
So
Once he left, did he change?
Did he change, or did the house change?
Well, did he change? Well, I mean, the house, you know, did he change himself because he's removing himself from the element?
Well, when he left, he moved to Florida, and my Uncle Clifford lived in Florida, who was a devout Christian, his older brother.
Uh-huh.
He had gone there, and he fought a battle for the rest of his life. Unfortunately, he was shot to death in 1987.
Was this your dad?
Yes, and,
Wow.
you know, he fought an up-and-down battle for the rest of his life. He would have periods to where he would do well and walk the straight and narrow and stay away from alcohol, and then he would revert back. So it was definitely a battle he fought for the rest of his life. When he left us, again, my mother was very, very ill. She could not work, and I'm ashamed to tell you that we had to go on welfare. And
Do not be ashamed of that. That happens in the best of families.
well, I tell you, it was just, and that is a story within itself, because, you know, my father not sending any money home, just eating on a daily basis and having the necessities was a real challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, just think that if there wasn't a program out there like, you know, the welfare programs, that you guys wouldn't have ate.
Yeah, and, you know, again, the most frequently asked question is, well, why did you stay? And
I was about to ask that question.
yeah, well, the answer is my mother was a very proud and private woman. She was very embarrassed and ashamed by all of this. And her mom, my grandmother, Dora Harvey, wanted us to come stay with her. But she and my step-grandfather occupied a one-bedroom apartment, so my mother was not going to burden them. My mother's sister wanted us to come stay with her, but she had 8 children and a husband. So, again, my mother was not going to burden anyone. And we ended up losing the house, and the house was auctioned off in a public auction in the front yard. And the man that bought the house in the auction knew of my mother's circumstances and let us stay there on a pay-as-you-can, when-you-can basis. So that's
Wow.
how we were able to stay.
That's awesome.
And, well, maybe so,
I was
maybe
going to say
not.
blessing or a curse in
Yeah.
disguise.
But after my father left, my mother came under physical attack, regular physical attack, from 2 entities in particular, and I believe she was being attacked up until the day she died.
Now, did you ever see I mean, you talked about the angel you saw.
Yeah,
Did you ever see the darker entities that?
I sure did.
Now, how would you describe them?
Well, let me fast forward to 1979, because at this point in time, I hated my father very much. I loathed him. I couldn't even look at him for the things that he had done. And praise God, I was able to forgive him before his death. But I had gone to Florida with my brother, and I didn't want to go. My brother worshipped the ground my father walked on, and so we ended up going there for a visit, and it was really a blessing in disguise because I had a chance to have a long talk with my Uncle Cliff while I was there, and I was working through him at that time to instill the seeds of hope and faith in me and give me an understanding of the power of God. And no question about it that God did this for a reason, because it wasn't long after that, after returning to the house from Florida, that I would have my first battle with these demonic entities. My Uncle Clifford told me that those of us who accept Jesus Christ as our Savior have power and authority over demons in the name of Jesus Christ, and we can cast these demons out in Jesus' name, and I firmly believe it to this day because I've had many battles with demons in my adult life, and I have cast demons out of people, so I know it to be true.
Now, did you said, or I don't know if you've said before, but there was actually an exorcism on the house,
That's
correct?
correct. So I'm leading up to this. It wasn't an exorcism per se. We had a priest involved for the last 16 months that we lived there. And it got to the point to where the priest was actually bringing mason jars full of holy water. I'm sorry to say that the activity grew more violent and intense with his involvement.
Really?
And 1979, after returning from Florida, I had just witnessed my mother being attacked, picked up in the air by an unseen force, and hurled across a bedroom. And
Picked up in the air?
That's correct. And this happened on many occasions. She was picked up in the air and hurled across a bedroom, her bedroom, landing into her makeup table, and she was cut open and scratched and bruised. My mother always carried marks on her long after my father had left, and I just snapped. Something in me snapped. I grabbed the Bible, I grabbed the jar of the holy water, and I began to call these things out in the name of Jesus Christ. And as I did this, the house began to vibrate. It was like a mini earthquake going on. It looked like a scene from a Hollywood movie, except for this was really happening. Things were falling off the walls. Things were flying around. Now, I was 13 years old at the time, and I had 5 adults with me. And the adults were terrified, as you can imagine, and I should have been as well, but I believe God was working through me at this point in time. And I continued on and calling these things out, and at one point, several feet in front of me in the living room, 4 of these entities did appear, and they appeared in greenish beams of light.
Wow.
And one had the look of what I would say an old-time undertaker, a very sinister-looking individual, black hair, like kind of wavy, curly black hair, black beard, black suit, very ashen, pale white skin, and the whites of the eyes were just black.
Wow.
And the second entity had the look of a male, like close-cropped, curly red hair, long scar down the left side of its face, and the eyes were black, this same type of ashen, pale white skin, and again had a very sinister look. Now, those 2 entities were the 2 entities that were attacking my mother on a regular basis. They were coming to her bed and waking her up and choking her and other things. She carried bruises and scratches and cuts all the time. And the third entity that I saw had the look of a witch. It's a female, long dark hair, long black gown, and again, black eyes and this pale white skin. And then the fourth entity is what I call the Dark Force entity. And if you look at the cover of my book, Dark Force, there is a depiction there, and that depiction is derived from an actual photograph that I have taken. I'd taken the photograph in the year 2000 of this hooded entity that has no identifiable features other than a set of glowing red eyes. And I don't know if you were able to receive the photos that I sent over. I sent some photographs over.
I have. I had not had a chance to upload. I'm going to go ahead and do that now.
Okay, well, one of those photographs is that Dark Force entity, and I've had many battles with that entity over the years in my adult years. And I clearly saw these entities for several seconds, as did the 5 adults with me, and then they dissipated, and as they dissipated and vanished, all of the chaotic activity that was occurring in the house ceased. So that was the first battle that I had with demons. And
Now,
certainly
when
not
you
the
see
last.
these demons, are they like clear as somebody standing right next to you? Are they like right there? Or are they kind of like misty?
Translucent,
Are
yeah.
they?
They were very vivid and clear, but yet there seemed to be some sort of, how can I say this, some sort of distortion around them as they were in these
like they were
greenish
kind of
beams.
fuzzy or
Yeah, kind of
not
like
exactly there.
some sort of fuzzy distortion around them as they were in these greenish beams of light. It very reminiscent of how in Star Trek, someone would be beamed up or whatever. Just
Sure.
picture it in that kind of manner.
Wow.
Do you think they were incubuses? If that's, or incubi, I don't know what the plural is, but.
Well, I'll say this, that again, many things happened, and some things I didn't put in the book, and some things I couldn't put in the book. So I'll just say they were vile to the full
Extent. I get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no question about it. But again, as horrible and as tragic and as sad as this story is, the good news is that God delivered me from this garbage, and I can never thank God and praise God enough for it. And as I said, he had a plan for me then. As bad as things were, and as crazy as it seemed, and as hopeless as it seemed, I believe in some sort of crazy way it was a test from God in a sense. A portion of it was to see if I could be what he wanted me to be as far as being a warrior against these negative dark forces. So again, I can never thank God and praise God enough for that. And that's where it began. And my life, I tell you, I stand before you now talking with you. I'm far more blessed than I have ever been cursed. I've had a plethora of supernatural experiences in my adult years, including a 22-day case of demonic possession to a loved one. I have no doubt that that occurred because these forces were trying to get to me, and it was linked to the events that happened in that house. I am currently working on a second book, which will be called
when did
Dark
this
Force
happen?
2. The possession?
The possession, yes.
I'll say it happened in the 80s, and I've got to be very careful. I won't reveal the identity of the victim of this and the timeline, but it did happen, and it ended in an exorcism by a Catholic priest. Now, again, I'm not Catholic, and my family had very little religious background. My parents did believe in God. However, we never once attended church as children. We're never baptized, so there was no religious structure or background. And this demonic entity knew this when the possession happened because it spoke to me. It spoke to me through this person, and this was a female, but suddenly this female's voice had changed to a deep masculine voice, and this female's eyes had turned black, just as black as the eyes I saw in those demonic entities in that house. And the first thing it said to me was, for a man that had such faith in your God, you surely don't know the Bible. And it began to quote scripture after scripture after scripture, mocking me. And it was correct. I did not know the Word of God then. I did not know the scriptures.
Now, what kind of entities, did any religious people go into the home? I don't mean religious, like somebody from the church, were they able to go in and identify these entities, or?
Well, we had a priest involved for the last 16 months that we lived there.
Was he able to? What did he think? I guess that's the best way to say it.
Well, I'll say this. He was a frequent visitor to the house. He was there quite often. We had a number that sometimes we called him in the middle of the night when things got really bad. Through all of that, and that being said, I'm not going to criticize the man.
Sure.
I guess he did the best that he could do, but they definitely did not take the next step as far as doing any sort of going into battle against this. I believe that it was able to gain in power and intensity because the priest was coming. He was blessing the house, and he would continue to bless the house, and he would pray intercessory prayers and things of that nature. And again, I know he did the best he could, but based on my experiences and the approach I take with demons and other people, I believe that when we put on the armor of God, the best defense is a strong offense. You have to take the offensive against these foul, filthy, trashy things, and you just have to go in and have total faith in God and just know that you can go in. Jesus Christ gave us power and authority to go in and take authority over this garbage in his name and go and cast this stuff out. Now, I know it to be true because I've gone and helped several families over the last couple of years, and that is part of my life's work now, is helping other people who are experiencing this horrible thing. And, you know, people get to a point, and it's certainly in my case, my family, we got to a point to where I say in Dark Forest that we were like prisoners in a POW camp. You know, we were devoid of emotions after a while. We were so defeated mentally, spiritually, and physically that we couldn't even function anymore. We were very much zombie-like. And these things were able to manipulate each and every one of us and drive us to do things that were out of character, far out of character.
Now, how did it influence you? I mean, you would say that's out of character.
Yeah, well, in my case, I believe it was 1978, these things actually were manipulating me, and it was an impulse, an irresistible urge, if you will, to suddenly go and set the woods on fire. And I had become obsessed with setting these fires. Now, where this house is located, there was a very deep and large ravine behind it with a lot of brush in there, and my younger brother and I and another boy that lived right near us, we were going down into that ravine and setting the ravine on fire, setting, fires in different spots in the ravine, and it nearly cost my brother's life on one occasion. And God was with us on that day because he should have burned up.
See, and I see the correlation between the fires and the fact that you were seeking that type of behavior out. It just makes sense to me that that would be one of the weapons that a demon would use.
Oh, yeah, and here's to go even further and even more bizarre, is that not only was I manipulated to do this, but as time went on, other kids began doing this. And not only that, we all had these little K2 shovels back then, and we couldn't understand what we were doing, but we were just doing it. All of these kids in the area began to dig in this ravine, and we were digging these tunnels, and it was just totally bizarre. Yeah, now some of it was okay. We're hanging out in this fort or tunnel that we built, but it went beyond that. This was a compulsion, and I guess you had to be there to understand what I'm saying, but it truly, there was some sort of influence on the kids. Now, again, another influence that was very prevalent in that neighborhood was that the level of violent crimes and domestic abuse in that neighborhood was off the charts. For such a small community, this community was ravaged.
Well, you did say that there was activity going on in the entire area.
Yeah.
How big was the community?
Very, very small. I can't say in distance. I would say probably.
I mean, but it was just one little neighborhood?
Yes, pretty much. And there were two sides now. There's a highway called Ritchie Highway that runs and separates the sides. One side is Eastway and the other side is Westway, and that's where my old house is located, off of Westway. And on the side of Westway sat the Herondale Mall, which was the first indoor mall constructed in the country. And so the kids were, there were a lot of blue-collar type of people that lived there, but just a very, very high rate of crime and violent crime and domestic abuse occurred in Herondale. Just and again, John D. Romine, the gentleman I referred to earlier in the program about his book, The Enigma of the Wishing Rock, he's a retired Anne Arundel County police officer, which he controlled those streets and has just case file after case file of these bizarre occurrences and just an abnormally high amount of crime for the area and violent, bizarre crimes.
See, and that does not surprise me, because I think, too, that houses hold energy, whether it's positive or negative. And so if a family moved into a house they not necessarily had any connection to a demon, if somebody that had lived there before left that kind of energy, then I think it passes along. And the longer you're in that environment, the easier of a target you are. And then it just almost becomes generational, like so many other things.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it was just, after writing it, and as I was writing it, I was thinking to myself, it was just mind-boggling that we were able to endure so much mental and physical abuse. I mean, none of us ever slept much in the house, and not only was my mother very ill for the entire time, I suffered from many illnesses as well. Many. After each one of these attacks, I would the next day feel like I had come down with the flu.
Wow.
Yeah, I quite often visiting the doctor, and they were perplexed by so many visits to the doctor and couldn't understand why I was sick like that. So I missed a lot of school as a child. And as I said, after my mother's untimely death, I'd stopped going to school in the 8th grade. So that was a reason I always wanted to share the story, but I always felt that I couldn't do it because I felt like I was inferior intellectually. I felt like I couldn't do it. And again, I say this was God, because he kept urging me to do it, that it was super important to get the story out there and share it with people, because so many people are in bondage and they are in darkness. They might as well have shackles and chains on them because they just feel hopeless and helpless. I get emails from people that are suicidal because they don't know what to do. They don't know who to turn to. They don't know where to go. And again, for all the listeners out there, I would urge you, there's only one Savior. There's only one deliverer, and that is Jesus Christ. I know this to be true.
And, you hear that a lot with people that have went through the same kind of situations, that you have. And we're glad you wrote the book. Nick has it on the front page of our website. So if you click on the picture, it'll take you right to Amazon, correct, Nick?
Yes.
To where you can purchase the book. We are out of time, and I do want to thank you for sharing your story with us.
It's been a fantastic story.
Oh, thank you all so much. God bless you, and I certainly hope to be on with you again sometime in the future.
Yeah, because your story is just the tip of the iceberg, correct? I mean,
Correct.
You've got a lot more to tell.
Yeah, we could be here. You could make a Bill Bean series.
Well, that may not be a bad idea.
The best bits of Mr. Bean.
Anytime you'll have me.
Sorry.
All right, thank you
Bill,
so much.
thank you very much. You have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That's such a wild story. Yes, no, maybe.
Oh, I'm
You're looking.
I'm usually not like this.
It was one of those you kind of just want to listen to it, kind of take it in and try to figure out. I mean, because there's so much stuff that's happening. I'm actually putting the pictures up right now, and you can see one of them's got the hooded figure he's talking about. I'm working on them because I messed them up. They're all huge on my side.
I see. That happens to me all the time. It gets so big.
And I showed this one to Jordan earlier. There's one with his mom, and behind her, I'm moving away. I'm gesturing and moving away from the mic. I'm sorry. But behind the mom, there's these two entities just standing, like leering over her.
All right. Well, we have to go now. Show
Time
me on the break.
Coming
CNN
soon.
News. We'll be right back on Whispers.
Whatever.
Pulling out at first dawn's light.
Now it's time for Whispers, your number one source for all things paranormal, with your hosts, Jordan Klein and Nick Queen, and produced by the lovely Lola Miller. Whispers is brought to you by West Virginia Penitentiary Tours at the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville. Unforgettable, historical, educational.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. I just want to point out that Lola giggles like a little kid whenever it says the lovely Lola Miller on that announcement.
I do.
It's funny. She's like,
Well,
that was kind of witchy.
Yes, I don't sound like that. I have Todd to thank for that little nickname. He's the one who gave me that nickname. So.
Is there a story behind this, or?
Later.
Later.
Okay. It has something to do with sugardaddy.com, but we won't go there.
We need
Nice.
another hour.
No, we
Wow.
don't. We have Mr. Friedman is on the line.
All right, our next guest for tonight, Mr. Stanton Friedman. Stanton is the first civilian investigator of the Roswell incident. He has done many books on the circumstances of what happened, and we are very glad to have him with us tonight. Stanton, you with us?
I'm with you, and I've only written 4 books, and only one is directly about Roswell. One's about MJ12. The others cover the waterfront. I've been at this so long, I write about every aspect of the UFO phenomenon.
Well, four books is many when,
Yes.
when in terms
Jordan's
of me.
opinion, yes, that is many books.
I'm working on number 5.
And what's this book going to be on?
The title is Science Was Wrong. And it's not primarily about UFOs at all, but there's been a lot of damage done to society by paying attention, as a result of paying attention to strong opinions voiced by people who didn't know what the heck they were talking about, but had nice credentials. You know, the piled higher and deeper guys, the PhDs, and you know, how many thousands of people died because of the vigorous objections to smallpox vaccinations. And you know, there's a lot of this kind of stuff, and the people very well educated who said man would never fly, and space travel is utter bilge, and you know, I'm working right now on the biggest hoax I've ever seen, really, and that's this global warming, climate change, man-produced climate change. You wouldn't believe how much nonsense has been written about that.
Are you saying Al Gore didn't know what he was talking about?
Yes.
Now, why would you say a politician talking
That's
about
true.
science would be wrong?
I know.
I don't understand.
Well, yeah, it's one of the peculiar aspects of this. And the thing is, you know, it would be funny if it weren't such a serious topic because of the proposed expenditures of huge sums of money. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars to control CO2, evil CO2. We have declared war on CO2. Of course, the plants need it to grow, and the crops need it to grow. And the planet's been cooling for 10 years, or at least hasn't been heating. And it's a very long story. And the problem is there's too much information. And if you listen to the planetary scientists, I'm planetary. That's my UFO hat coming on. If you listen to the climate guys, the IPCC, International Panel on Climate Change, there's a consensus, and all scientists agree that the Earth is heating up at a rapid rate, and we have to do everything possible to suppress the production of CO2. That's what they say.
Yeah, at least the 122 of them that were actually at the conference. That must be the consensus.
Oh, you know about that. Yeah, those guys. and I just got a huge volume. I didn't get it all. I didn't download it all. It's 850 pages.
Yeah, and you can count out about 790 of them because it's all their twos, wherefores, how to, you know.
No, this is the opposition volume.
Oh.
And it's signed by like 32,000 people. The IPCC only had 2,500. But what I'm finding is that, and this is co-authored with Kathleen Marden, who was the co-author on and did most of the work on Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience.
Mm-hmm. That's a good story, too.
Well, Kathy is Betty Hill's niece, but she's also trained in sociology. She was director of investigator training for MUFON for 10 years. She's on the board. Very bright lady. And she's handling some of the medical stuff because actually the stories make you sick when you realize how much damage was done, quote, in the name of science. And as a scientist, there are times when I'm ashamed to carry that title, you know. But much of the attitude shows up the same as toward UFOs by the nasty, noisy negativists, as I call them. You know, there are 4 basic rules. Don't bother me with the facts. My mind's made up. What the public doesn't know, I'm not going to tell them. If you can't attack the data, attack the people. It's easier. And do your research by proclamation. Doesn't that sound like the global warming thing? Or the anthropogenic? I love that. Man-induced global warming, which he isn't. So it's the same attitudes by people who stand to benefit in some way or another. Although I must say, sometimes I don't understand where the benefit comes in. I just read Benjamin Radford, who edits the Skeptical Inquirer, and who has a list of 10 great hoaxes. And number 10, the pièce de résistance, is the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. Now, that is the silliest nonsense I've ever heard. I've heard people discuss certain aspects of it, but to call it a hoax is an intentional effort, like the balloon boy.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
That's an entirely different matter, where with sort of malice aforethought, somebody creates a story that isn't true. Now, anybody who can say that the Hill story is a hoax doesn't know what he is talking about. There's been so much involved in investigation. But, of course, the noisy negativists don't investigate. They repeat what other noisy negativists say, who got that from what other ones say. And if you say it often enough, it's believable, isn't it? Everybody knows. I love that phrase too.
Yeah, it seems like you're talking global warming at the beginning, then we're same thing. It seems like they've got the same playbook. Run it into the ground, make the people out seem as ridiculous and as crazy as, because the first thing they attacked with the balloon boy guy was, he believes there's aliens, and there was a UFO, and all of a sudden, right then he was smeared before he even knew it was,
Well, it's kind of strange. The headquarters of the Mutual UFO Network is in Colorado.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I don't know whether this guy was a member or not. I hope not.
Yeah.
I saw this dude on Wife Swap.
Yeah,
he is just out of control
Swap.
anyway. The minute I saw who it was, I thought, this did not happen. This did not happen.
Well, what was strange to me as a father, a grandfather, and I'm even a great-grandfather, who was paying attention to the kids,
Yeah.
It seemed to me they were being driven along for the hoax, and the kids looked awful skinny. And when a kid throws up twice on television,
I know.
What parent lets that happen? Doesn't take him out of there. I mean, talk about nervous.
Well, I think at that point they're running him from show to show so much. Yeah, anybody would throw up. At that age.
As a sideline, who I criticized more than even the parents on this throwing up thing was Meredith Vieira. Katie Couric. I don't think he threw up on her show, but Meredith Vieira and Diane Sawyer, especially Meredith Vieira, is a mom. Wouldn't the first thing you would say, go take care of your child?
You got it.
Yeah.
That's what we were saying here, that what you're supposed to do is to say, take care of your child.
Yeah.
And not go on with the show. I mean, does anybody know, does this guy have a job? I don't even think he has.
No,
I think that's what they're trying to do, is get a job as a reality TV show on TLC.
I think that was the whole basis, because now they're really serious. Because, like I said, he was on Wife Swap, and I saw headshots of him where he was a supposed actor and everything back, like 15, 20 years ago.
That's where he met his wife, was acting school.
Yeah, well, she really needs to go back. But I think it was just a shot to try and get a reality show out of it.
I mean, do you think that this, because you've been in the UFO, I want to say, business, I guess, but do you think this is what, do you think that this is what causes the most problem? Is that anytime the media does give attention to the UFO story, it's always these freak shows that, when you go on, you're a scientist, and it's hard to paint you as.
I thought things were getting a bit better. We've had a lot more coverage. Part of the problem, of course, is that newspapers are dying on the vine, and they know that people are interested in the subject, and so they've been giving it more coverage. I got worried when I heard the 911 call, for example, and she said flying saucer rather than balloon. what do you expect the person on the other end to think? She's frantic. She's obviously upset and distressed, and she's calling about a flying saucer. If you'd said a balloon, a homemade balloon, whatever you want to call it, but helium-filled balloon, which would have some lift and stuff.
I think they even said weather balloon at some point. That's kind of what he was designed it for.
Balloon or something.
Anything but that, yeah.
Well, Stan, you are a scientist. Could that child have actually survived inside a helium-filled balloon for any length of time?
Well, presumably he would have been in that little compartment at the bottom. If he was actually in a helium balloon, no, there's nothing to breathe. I mean, helium won't support.
Well, I know there wasn't any gondola or anything like that.
Yeah, there was a small round region at the bottom. Now, what it looked like, I couldn't tell the actual.
He had like some batteries in there, and it was really cramped. I mean, he would have been the only one to fit in there. Little boy. I mean, it was.
And they say only weighed 40 pounds or so.
Yeah, and they were trying to see if it would even fly with him in there. They had a bucket. The only time I ever saw it was they had a bucket in there filled with sand. I think they said it was 37 pounds, the bucket. But that was already holding it down. I mean, there wasn't enough helium, I think, to bring it up.
Yeah.
So it was a silly.
I was just curious, because the way they made it sound, the way I thought is that the kid actually climbed up in the envelope. And I'm thinking, well, if nothing else, he's going to talk like this.
He'd be dead awful quick. There ain't no air in that helium.
Okay. That question for me then.
Yeah, sorry. Well, recently people have tried to explain away the Lonnie Zamora case in Socorro, New Mexico in 1964 as a prank pulled by the students at New Mexico Institute of Technology down there. And that was just a balloon. And the community has jumped on that explanation because it doesn't make any sense. This thing zipped off at a pretty high velocity, parallel to the ground, and silently after the first couple of minutes. Now, how do you do that with a conventional balloon built by kids at a university? And yet that's come along. I mean, it's as stupid as saying that the Hill case was a hoax. You can argue about the star map. I'd take anybody on, of course, but still. But that's interpretation. But to say it was a hoax is absurd.
Yeah.
And, when you look at the people and the background of the people and the community in which they lived and so forth and so on. And, I mean, you realize that Barney Hill was on the Governor's Civil Rights Commission in New Hampshire. He and Betty and Kathleen went to the inauguration of Lyndon Johnson down in Washington in '65. I mean, we're talking about extremely well thought of people. Betty was a social worker, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
For the state of New Hampshire. They didn't want the information out, and there was nothing. They went to a lawyer, and they found out there was nothing they could do to keep the reporter who had gotten a tape that he shouldn't have gotten hold of from publishing the story. They were worried about losing their jobs. And this idiot's calling it a hoax?
See, and that's the first thing I look at is what the people that are telling the story, what are they gaining out of it? If they're all of a sudden they're getting paid all this money to come up with this story, that's a red flag to me. People like Betty and Barney Hill, who did not seek the publicity on it and never gained anything from it, but being the butt of jokes, and now this even, they had absolutely no reason to come up with a story like this.
And past that, I mean, Barney himself was, a man of extreme, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a noble person. He, fought for civil rights.
Integrity.
Integrity is the word I'm looking for. And just to say that he faked it, I mean, and I got that from, we talked with Kathleen Martin, and I read the book that you guys wrote. I mean, just an upstanding citizen, and it's hurtful to even say. I mean, I think something happened to them, whether you want to say what it was. And I know we've had some people say that it was they called it a military lab abduction rather than UFO abduction. Now, do you have any opinion on that? I'm sure you do.
It doesn't fit. If you look at what the beings looked like, if you looked at where it landed, and how do you get a conventional round vehicle created by us and unknown to everybody else down in the middle of a forest with an area not much bigger than itself? And I'm not saying there aren't any MILABs,
Sure.
military abductions, but this case just doesn't fit. And where does the star map fit into that? And the warts on Barney's groin, and there's just a whole bunch of aspects that, if you neglect all the factual aspects, then sure, it could be anything. Yeah, that's a good explanation. But it gets pretty silly at some time. And
Sure.
It's amazing to me that despite all the attacks from all directions at the poles, which I discuss in my book Flying Saucers and Science, show that there are more believers than non-believers, because the public, I've developed a strong respect for the ability of average Joe Blow, if you will, to think straight if you give them the facts and the data. Now, the laughter curtain is a major problem.
Yeah.
Most people I have found, I ask at the end of my lecture, and typically 10% of the people believe they've seen one, but 90% didn't report the UFO because they were fearful of ridicule. So, and I've seen this over and over. I've given 700 lectures, so I have a pretty good sampling, and all over the place, 50 states, 9 provinces, and 16 other countries. So I get around a lot, and the crowd's as big as 2,000. The small ones are pretty small, but the big ones are pretty big. And, I get a lot of email, and I do lots of radio and television. And so I've got a big feedback loop here. So what do people really think? What concerns them? What are they interested in? They are interested in the UFO why questions, but fewer than 2% have read any of the large-scale scientific studies. And once I tell them, then they're, I didn't realize that. I didn't know about that. And so if you put the data out there and you raise the objections of the nasty, noisy negativists and demolish them, look, I don't have a problem. I've had 11 hecklers, and 2 of them were drunk, and over 700 lectures.
Now, Stan,
I don't know.
I do have a question for you. Yeah,
sure.
You've been, investigating the paranormal, or the UFOs in particular, for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Let's say
52 years now.
Okay, I'd say that was a long time. Now let's say there's you're 20 years old out there listening, and you want to get started on investigating all this stuff. How do you get started? Where do you go? What do you look at?
Well, I guess a couple of things. First, you want to read as much as you can, but that doesn't do you any good because there are a zillion books, and many of them are crap. I would check out MUFON at www.mufon.com, MUFON, and there's a monthly MUFON journal which has good articles in it. There's an annual, we've had 40 now, symposia with the papers presented in a half-inch thick symposium proceedings, and almost all the papers are by engineers and scientists. And if you want to become an investigator, you can take a test, you can study. There's a handbook for investigators and stuff. And so that way you can get active. And I say active. Last month, September 2009, MUFON had 750 sighting reports submitted to them.
Wow.
That's a lot. So sure, most of them are explainable because, this is an intriguing aspect, the reason we can explain most sightings as relatively conventional phenomena seen under perhaps unconventional circumstances is that people are good observers but not such good interpreters. People say you can't trust eyewitness testimony unless we can explain what they saw. Then it's perfectly trustworthy. That's a crazy attitude, because how do we know it was Venus? Because the individual said he was looking at this angle to the horizon, about 45 degrees, let's say. It was 3 in the morning. I was looking to the southwest, let's say, and you check the book, and it was the brightest thing in the sky. And so you check real quick, and obviously he was watching Venus. Why do we know? Because that was an accurate description. Now, he didn't know about Venus. I had the same thing happen 3 times on the West Coast. People describe something coming parallel to the coast, typically in the early evening, twilight, let's say, where the sun had gone down, but the thing up there was kind of bright.
Yeah.
And when I asked the people and tried to sort out the observation, I said it was just over the hill. I said, well, you can't really tell that. What angle was it above the horizon? What direction were you looking? What time was it? These are observables that you can do pretty well at. What direction was it moving across, right to left, whatever. And as soon as you do that, then you get a better picture. And in all three cases, I called Vandenberg Air Force Base because I had seen one of these things myself.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, it was a satellite launched down the coast, and they gave a very good description. Now, the most interesting one was guys sitting on the beach, Hermosa Beach, looking out over the ocean, and they said it was crazy. It came down, it was moving rapidly along, and like it was a string of popcorn. There were things that were bright that were dropped off, and you go a little ways, another. Well, it turns out this was a special weather satellite that had a whole string of solid rocket boosters attached that were being dropped off. And it was a very good description. Now, the guys who saw this had no idea what the heck is that,
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming them for that. Why would you expect them to know? I didn't know until I called Vandenberg. It sounded like, the other characteristics, something from up there, but I don't know what. And so you learn pretty quick that when people say they see a bank robber, if they tell you that the height was 6 feet plus or minus 20%, that's not very useful, because it includes most of the population. So you need to zero in more if you're identifying people. But if you say it was going 1,000 miles an hour and stopped dead in the sky, now it doesn't matter whether it was 800 or 1,200 plus or minus 20%.
Yeah.
We don't have things that do that. And people don't understand the big argument when I say if we had, we don't have things that fly like that. If we did, we'd be using them in warfare. What other reason do you build advanced systems? And we've had a lot of wars. Oh, there are secret systems. Well, why didn't we use them in Korea, in Vietnam, in the Gulf War? People say, well, it was German technology. So why didn't they use them? The only reason to build it would be to bomb England or wherever. You see what I'm getting at? But
yeah.
You got to go in the direction of rationality about these things. But I'm kind of excited. I'm working on a movie, a couple of them, but
you
one.
Are?
Well, I was down in West Virginia, of all places.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah, and this is a couple of weeks ago, and a group of us were working on a Monster Quest show about the Flatwoods Monster.
Yeah.
And that happened in September 12th, 1952, right after that big fuss over Washington. And there's an excellent book by Frank Ficino, who spent, I think it's 18 years now on the Flatwoods case. And we had one of the key witnesses there. And, I thought these guys were professionals. They did a darn good job. And I don't know when it'll be on. They were saying maybe February. So tell all West Virginia, Monster Quest will have the Flatwoods Monster on. And there's another one that may be related to my book, Top Secret Magic, and another book by Don Schmidt talking about maybe Majestic 12.
There you go.
That should be exciting. And, boy, if there's nonsense about the Betty and Barney Hill case and abductions, there is so much nonsense about Majestic 12, the MJ-12 papers and stuff. And what bugs me is it's not as if there's not a lot of solid information out there. Not only my book, Top Secret Magic, but there are papers and a lot of examples of documents and so forth. I've been to 20 archives. I wrote classified documents. I have seen an awful lot of stuff. And I try to be scientific. People raise objections. I respond. Let's see if that holds up. And yet I've heard more darn nonsense. And people get a real kick out of my book, Flying Saucers in Science is a copy of Phil Klass's check to me for $1,000.
There you go.
I mean, well, it was a stupid offer on his part. I mean, I'm glad he made it. But it was the typeface of one of the documents. Maybe I didn't notice that it was the large pica type, but the National Security Council, they used elite type, and I got 9 documents to prove it. He got them by mail. He'd never been to the Eisenhower Library. There's 250,000 pages of National Security Council material there, and obviously it's rational to extrapolate, well, I got 9, so all 250,000 must have been done with the same typewriter. He offered me $100 each for every genuine such document I could find. He had certain criteria to be signed and dated and so forth. But he set a limit of 10, unfortunately.
I'm about to say, you could have made off pretty well for yourself there.
Yeah, I was hoping he'd up the ante. I said, let's go for 20, Phil. So I went back there. I had a bunch in my drawer, but they didn't meet all this criteria. But I was going back to the Eisenhower Library, pulled out 14, sent him copies and an invoice for $1,000. I guess he set the limit at 10, $100 each. And so he sent me a check. Now, he told everybody about challenging me and nobody about paying me, and he got very upset when I included a copy of the check in a report I wrote, threatened to sue me. His father was a lawyer, so good at writing threatening letters, you know. And so I said, Phil, look, you sent me a check. I Xeroxed it. I took it to the bank. They cashed it. I can do whatever I want with the Xerox. And so it's in the book, and it draws. Now, I'm a good guy. I blacked out some of the banking numbers. Yeah. We don't want to give him a hard time. But I mean, it's one of those stupid things. Well, what could you say? I mean, if you had 99 documents out of a total of 100, you were missing one, and they were all done with the same typewriter, then it might be rational to say that, well, probably the 100th is too.
Yeah.
But from 9 to 250,000 when you'd never been at the library? I mean, you know, this is utterly absurd. It's typical, I love this phrase, of the intellectual bankruptcy of the pseudoscience of anti-ufology. And it is.
The pseudoscience of anti-ufology.
Pseudoscience of anti-ufology.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, my paper at the MUFON conference this past year in August, the annual conference in Denver, number 40, was the pseudoscience of anti-ufology. And I give a lot of examples of what they're trying to pass themselves off as scientists, but they say things that are totally unscientific. Whether it's about interstellar travel, about which they know nothing, whether they say that, governments can't keep secrets. And Seth Shostak, who should have known better, well, I don't think he's ever had a clearance. Maybe he shouldn't have known better. He said the government can't keep anything secret. Look what they did with FEMA. Well, how about the stealth aircraft program where they spent $10 billion in secret to develop the stealth fighter?
Now, do you believe that our government's capable of interstellar travel?
The government? No, I believe the aliens are. No, I don't think so. Look, we've got ideas. I worked on fusion propulsion systems, way back in the early 1960s. If you want to spend the dough, I know how to go.
How far away do you think we are from this? I mean, do you think we're reverse engineering any of the craft that have crashed?
Well, okay, there are two separate problems here now.
Sure.
I don't think the ones that have crashed have been the interstellar craft. I think they've been the local Earth excursion modules. In other words, think of our huge nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, which, and this usually comes as a shock to people, can actually operate for 18 years without refueling.
Wow.
Okay, they carry 75 little airplanes, which can run, 1 to 3 hours without refueling? Mm-hmm. But which can move pretty fast while they're at it and in the sky and not in the water and so forth. So I think between the stars, we got interstellar motherships. Call them fatherships. I don't know why everybody wants, except fathers don't deliver babies and mothers do.
See, we always have things just popping on out.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, we may have learned a lot from recovered crash saucers, whether at Aztec or Roswell or Varginha down in Brazil, or there are other crashes around. But as far as I can tell, all the ones that crashed were little ones, the Earth excursion modules that zip around in the atmosphere. And the thing is, when you stop to think about it, obviously between the stars, there's no atmosphere, there's no gravity, they're very little. Entirely different situation than when you're zipping around a planet and you've got this dense atmosphere and you can heat up and you got gravity and it pulls you down, and entirely different circumstances. So I think we may have learned some useful technology. I don't think we've yet learned or spent the dough to get us to the stars. I mean, remember now, I'm not talking about other galaxies. I'm talking about down the street, around the corner. They just discovered 32 more exoplanets.
Uh-huh.
The neighborhood's crammed with planets. We didn't used to think there were any others outside the solar system, but science was wrong.
We're up to 400 and something different planets now, right?
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
And we've just started to look, and the number will get higher. We've got this new satellite that went up, named after a great astronomer, and it's only looking for Earth-sized planets, really. And so it's going to come up with a lot more. It takes better capability. It's like it used to be tough to measure the distance to the stars because astronomers weren't going anywhere. What was the point of wasting a lot of money trying to make good measurements? And then the European Space Agency put up the Hipparcos Satellite, and it measured 1 million different star positions to much more greater accuracy than the stuff that we had done before.
Now, are all those planets, where are they in regards to our solar system?
In the neighborhood. Look, within about 55 light years of here, there's 1,000 stars. And if you go out to, say, 100 light years, then it's about 8,000 stars. It goes as the cube of the distance. So, and some of these are out farther than that. So it's close by. It's the neighborhood. Remember, we got a galaxy here that's pretty good size, 100,000 light years across. Might have, depending on who you listen to, 200 billion stars. It might be 300 billion, but what's 100 billion stars between friends? Now, the next galaxy over, the big one, Andromeda, is 2 million light years, a little more than 2 million light years. So I don't worry about that. I mean, the 200 billion in our local galaxy is good enough, and the few thousand within our local neighborhood. I'm focused, and in the book Captured, we talk about the Betty Hill star map and Marjorie Fish's work that focuses on a very special pair of stars, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli. Now, it's the constellation of Reticulum, which you can't see from here. Got to go below the equator. That's why you don't hear about it much. Now, these two stars are only 39.3 light years away. It's just down the street. And as it happens, unlike us out in the boonies here with the next star over 4.3 light years, these guys are only an eighth of a light year apart from each other. They're both sun-like stars, and that's only true of about 5% of the stars in the neighborhood. And one more detail. They're a cool billion years older than the sun. Now, that has some implications. From a planet around one, you can directly observe the planets around the other one very easily. There's no guessing. And because of that time factor, and because of the nearness, you have a much greater incentive for interstellar travel when you got a neighbor, as they do, than we have. Furthermore, you got a little more time to develop it.
Yeah.
I mean, Friedman's law, technological progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. A laser pointer, that's not just a better light bulb. The nuclear airplanes that I worked on we did generate the thrust on a nuclear engine on the ground, not in the sky. That wasn't just a better chemical rocket. I worked on nuclear rockets on the ground. Very powerful. They're not just better chemical rockets. Entirely new physics.
Now,
so, go on.
You're talking about all these different stars out here. do you subscribe to the idea that there's a lot of different cultures and civilizations that are visiting the planet? We've talked
Well,
to
I don't
people,
know.
reptilians, greys.
Well, I think we can look at a situation that occurred after Columbus's visit. In the next 100 years after 1492, there were other Spaniards, there were Portuguese, there were Dutch, there were French, there were English, and I'm sure the Native Americans were saying, "What are these guys want?" Some of them were there to kill them, some to convert them to their religion, some to steal their gold.
Yes,
Some steal their
exploitation.
potatoes and
Yep.
take them back,
Yep.
So there was no general rule. As soon as you allow for interstellar travel in the neighborhood, they could be coming here for all kinds of reasons. In Flying Saucers and Science, I have a chapter on, why would you come here anyway? And I point out that the Earth is the densest planet in the solar system, not the people, the planet.
Well,
And
There's
that
arguments.
yeah.
it has more heavy metals than any of the other planets in the solar system. And heavy metals are rare and unusual and have special properties, many of which weren't appreciated until fairly recently. I mean, who cared about uranium 100 years ago?
Yeah.
It was used as glaze, yellow glaze for kitchen. Can't do that anymore. It's illegal. But you see what I'm saying, that there is stuff here that we might not appreciate that somebody else may have appreciated for a long time, because older solar systems have lower levels of heavy metals than we do. Metals are created by being cooked in supernovas, if you want a simple-minded approach to it. And so the older, the less you have. And so all those guys went out to California not to watch the Dodgers play back in 1849, but for gold. And thousands went to Alaska, and thousands went to Australia for gold because it was valuable. So what I'm saying is, we know that people will migrate for valuable stuff, will travel if they think they can make a buck. Whether it was a doubloon or whatever, it doesn't matter. So I think we need to start looking at these things. I would be astonished if there were only one civilization out there. Look at Earth. We got a lot of different people. You got pygmies and Watusi just a few hundred miles apart in Africa. Big 7-footers and little 3.5-foot guys. And so I think the word has gone out. Earth, not that it's a nice place to visit, but get it while you can, because pretty soon they'll be able to keep us away on the one hand, and pretty soon they may be taking their brand of friendship, which we all out here call hostility, out there. We're not a nice society. Think about it.
No,
World War II.
True.
How many people get taught in school anymore that in World War II we Earthlings killed 50 million of our own kind?
Yeah, I know it.
And
Well, and it
destroyed
goes on
1,700
today.
cities. What?
It goes on today.
Well, yeah, it hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
You're right. So if you were an alien and you watch as our technology evolves, from dynamite, during World War II, the big bombs were 10-ton blockbusters. Wow. 10 tons of dynamite equivalent. In 1952, we exploded our first H-bomb, 10 million tons of TNT equivalent. And the Russians put out one that was 57 million tons.
Wow.
Now, that's scary, frankly. I'm a nuclear guy. It's scary. The fireball from the 10 million ton was only 3 miles in diameter.
Only.
I would, think about it. What kind of an impression would that have made on aliens in the neighborhood? These guys are something else,
Now, here's a question. Do you think that aliens walk amongst us right now, and we just can't tell? Because that's come up a few different times with past guests.
I allow for that possibility. If you look at the Travis Walton case, for example, there were little guys around the table when he woke up in rather considerable pain and discomfort. Okay, he's scared as heck and grabs something and they leave and he goes out the door. And there's a guy, a little bigger than he is, and Travis is at least 6'3", who would pass for us any place, walking down the street. Now, was this guy a hybrid? Was he somebody hired for the occasion? I don't know. So if they look like us under those circumstances, some of them, it may well be that there are aliens amongst us. They don't take off a mask and now they look big eyes and alien. But it would make sense. Look, if you're going to send a spy into China, you don't send a tall blonde Norwegian. He doesn't fit in very well. And so I would allow room for that. I don't have evidence one way or another, but I have other stories where there's a mix, if you will, of guys that any place but New York you'd say, hey, they ain't from here. So there are a lot of questions we can't answer. I have a big gray basket.
Yeah.
Not black, not white, maybe. And a scientist says, hey, I don't have enough data. It's like 3 equations with 4 unknowns. Hey, I need more, guys. Can't solve this.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, from a physicist perspective. The Large Hadron Collider.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? And do we have a caller, Gordon?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the caller first, and then we can get to that.
Okay. Who we got?
Okay, this is Dobbsy from Cameron, West Virginia.
Hi, Dobbsy.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good. You got a question for Mr. Friedman?
Yes, sir.
Are you there?
I believe there is something out there. I really do. I go outside and take a look up in space, and they say space goes on forever. So how's that for a question? It's about the truth, right?
I think it does. Are you asking me if it does? It depends.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Is there's no end,
it depends on how you describe forever. Very far. How about 13 billion light years?
That's forever in my book.
Yeah, it is in mine too.
Yeah.
And it's been around for 13 billion years. Forever in my book.
Yep.
And so, one of the things that's changed in less than 100 years is our concepts, our notions of how big the universe is, how old it is. Look, they were arguing in the 1920s about whether there was more than one galaxy. There were these nebulae out there, sort of cloudy regions, and no, they're part of our galaxy, is what everybody said. That's all there is. There ain't no more. Don't worry about it. Well, then there was some very good work done by Hubble, of all people, the Hubble telescope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And son of a gun, there are lots of galaxies out there. Those guys are really far away. And so how old is it? Well, how old is our neighborhood? Well, Lord Kelvin, the great British scientist, 10 million years and not a day more, because he was thinking of combustion as the source of power for the sun. Well, now we know it's nuclear fusion, and it's at least 4.5 billion years. And so our ideas about such things have changed drastically. I'm not saying we know all there is to know, you understand.
Oh, I understand that.
But I am impressed.
Here's my question to you.
Okay.
Now, you went to school for all this, right?
I spent 5 years in college, 2 years at Rutgers, 3 at the University of Chicago. Yeah, Carl Sagan and I were classmates for 3 years. He never bragged about that, but that's okay.
Anyway, is there an end to space or what? That's my question.
Okay.
Go on and on, but just tell me the truth. Is there?
Not so far as we know. I haven't been out there, you understand. I can't say I went past the edge or even got close. Yeah. But so far as we can tell, as our telescopes get more powerful, both radio telescopes and optical telescopes.
Yes, sir.
And as we start making measurements from space instead of from the surface of the planet, which is covered with this atmosphere, which gets in the way.
Yes, sir.
There always seems to be more. Yeah. And if you look at the pictures from Hubble, and there's half a dozen other major observatories out there, they're truly incredible because you get much better pictures out there than you do from the Earth. And so it's a huge universe with all kinds of weird stuff in it. Yes, and magnetic fields and high energy particles. They were asking about the Large Hadron Collider. somebody mentioned, and
Yeah.
you know that if it gets to working, understand.
Yeah.
They did get the beams going though, and those were going at 99.9999% of the speed of light.
Wow.
And so when I talk about going near the speed of light to get to the stars, it's no big deal. At just 99.99% of the speed of light, you can go that 39 light years in a little over 6 months pilot time. No big deal.
Well, you never know then, do you? So
No.
I guess there is no end to it.
Thanks for your call, Dobbsy.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Dobbsy.
Yeah, so it is a big universe, and we really can't tell,
Big
if there is.
and
because
old and still energy sources that we don't understand.
Now, do you think it's expanding still? The expanding universe theory?
There's some question about how much and where dark energy fits in there. There are a lot of mysteries. And guys who are theoretical physicists, they're having a field day because they get paid to play with equations to try to answer questions we don't know how to answer. And that's kind of neat. Now, they may be wrong, but you can't prove them wrong. They may be right.
Yeah.
So those guys are having a field day.
All right, I got a question for you, Doc.
Sure.
Which do you believe? The Big Bang Theory, or do you believe that there is a God and he made all of this?
Well, why not both?
Okay, that's fair. That's kind of how I feel.
Well, yeah, the Big Bang Theory may not tell us everything we want to know. There's always that question. So what was there before that?
Yeah, who banged it in the first place? Oh, that came out bad, but
Now, is there a God? That's a difficult question. Not for physicists, of course. We say we don't know.
Yeah.
The real thing is, what if he's the chief astronaut in the neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
You see, I expect that advanced civilizations will know not just about nuts and bolts and how to move fast, but they'll know about the mind of the spirit. They'll know about telepathy. They'll know about reincarnation. They'll know about biology. Who knows? They may really know about godlike creatures, for want of a better phrase. I'm not betting the house on it. You understand?
Yeah, yeah.
So I leave room, and when people talk about creationism versus evolution, what if somebody planted a colony here, for goodness sakes, and then things evolve? We know that a lot of animal stuff and plants and stuff evolve.
Yeah.
We see it in birds and all kinds of animals. So maybe we're a result of somebody's colonization. I might have been a penal colony. They dumped all the bad boys and girls here, and that's why we're so nasty to each other.
The universe is Australia.
Yeah.
That's right. Australians are very proud that convicts were the original settlers, white settlers down there.
Hey, Stanton, I do hate to cut you short because I love talking to you, but we are out of time.
Okay. www.stantonfriedman.com. That's what you need to remember.
That's where you go. www.stantonfriedman.com. Nick's got it linked up to our website, whispers082009.mp3.
Your books and everything. So.
We got your books up there so people can snatch them.
Good.
I'll make sure Jordan gets copies and reads them and knows there's only one Roswell one.
That's all right. I know you as the Roswell guy. I don't think you mind, do you?
No.
There we go. Stanton, thank you very much.
Thanks much, guys.
And have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, I love talking to him.
He's always a lot of fun. Did anybody else here think it was weird to be talking with Stanton Friedman about the balloon boy? I mean, I don't know why. It was just kind of, we started talking about like I don't know, just reality TV shows and stuff. I'm thinking, I wonder if he's ever been asked this question. You know what I'm saying? It's just
we're talking to Stanton Friedman about Balloon Boy.
And Today's Show. It just gets.
But he knew it. I mean, it wasn't like he went.
I know. It was.
Ew.
Yeah, and it was just interesting. It was just one of those surreal moments for me. I don't know why.
I had to ask him.
Oh no, I don't blame.
I had to.
Yeah.
That's it's like Pascal's wager,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I choose to believe in both.
Hey, why
Covering
not?
all my bases.
I mean, why couldn't God use? I mean, everybody always looks at it. Why not just use natural things, anyways?
Yeah.
Evolution to get to certain areas. I mean, it makes it's simpler way of doing it.
Okay, let's talk about our party next week.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Everybody call in. I mean, all of our listeners out of the area, all of our listeners in the area. We got books to give away. We got pizzas to give away. We got gift certificates to give away. Movie tickets. Oh, it's just going to be a good night. Everybody call in with your stories. I know I'm excited. I know Nick's excited. Lola better be.
I am excited. No, it should be a lot of fun. It should be a whole lot of fun.
Oh, look, Beauregard actually said we had a good show. Thanks, Beauregard.
Wow.
I think he came close to being tossed at one point because someone else said we had a good show so far.
Yeah, well,
don't jump to conclusions yet.
It's only half
whoa.
But hey, you know what? We'll take it. Everybody, that's all the time we got for this week. Don't forget next week, it's a Halloween party. Till then, don't be afraid, only believe.